I have a question here for Mr. Sanyal. It says, what is your view on MNREGA? Is it taxpayer money down the drain?
So, as I said, MNREGA was essentially set up as two things it was expected to do. One was that it was a way of, as a demand-driven safety net. And two, it was seen as a way to mobilize people to carry out various kinds of activities on the ground that, mobilizing people to clean up village ponds and things like that. Now, it is the case that historically a lot of the money was simply wasted, siphoned off and so on. But two or three things can be said about this. First of all, that it does still play some important role as a safety net. That's why I kept our game is to move away from it, but maintaining a safety net. Now, can we think of a better safety net? Maybe. But this exists, and while we are exiting out of the world of where people need that low-level safety net, I think there's no point in recreating yet another safety net at that level. We may need to create another one a little higher up, which will be of a different nature. So my own view is, for the time being, let MNREGA be. It will over time become irrelevant as we become richer, but no point in wasting time building another one at the subsistence level, which is where it's really aimed at. Meanwhile, we have reduced the leakage in it dramatically, thanks to the JAM Trinity that Ridham was also talking about. So it is, as I said, it serves a purpose. It's not as leaky as it used to be. And some systems have been introduced to be able to create useful assets with it. For example, the Prime Minister's what is it called? Gram Sadak Yojana and so on. So some amount of actual assets on the ground are actually getting done with it. We have much better ways of keeping track of it, thanks to the ability to take photographs, and monitoring has improved using technology. So I would argue that if I had to design it from scratch today, I would maybe find some other way of doing it, but given what it is today, and given that we should now begin to think about creating safety nets a notch above it in a few years, that is what I would rather put my effort into. For now, this serves the purpose.
Thank you. Ridham, I have a question for you, and perhaps connected to that also we could ask Mr. Sanyal for his views on labor reform. The question here is, without a single, you said we would soon become a manufacturing hub, but without a single large global brand emerging from India, do you think we'll become just another manufacturing hub for brands from other parts of the world?
No, it will happen actually. I don't think we should use history as a guide. After all, we are just $2,200 per capita income. China has been supplying to the world for 22 decades now. China has not created any major brand until recently. And even those brands, I think, are not really big. So brand creation is very different. It's a different ball game. I think a few Indian companies will rise to the occasion, and we will build a few global brands along the way. But right now, the focus will be to capture market share, trade with the world, because remember, when you want to come out of poverty, you need to trade with rich people. You need to improve your terms of trade. And we haven't actually done that over the past 30 years. Our market share in global physical goods exports stagnated for a long time at 1.7%. In the last 2 years, it's gone to 1.9. Our services export share has jumped 60 basis points. It's now at 4.3. So we're making inroads. I think when these numbers become a little larger, we think they'll double in the next 10 years. I think that's the time when we'll have the scale to go into, brand building.
And your thoughts on reform in both of you? I mean, in terms of how do you think just thoughts on how will reform actually take place, given the challenges that we've had in labor reform in the past?
Yeah, so this is actually a very tricky subject because the people who wrote our constitution in their wisdom decided that critical factors of production would be state subjects. So land, labor, electricity, farm are state subjects in this country. And it's not for lack of effort from the central government that we are not able to make these reforms because, like GST, and when I talk to American investors, I say, try getting your 50 states to give up taxation of products and services forever. That's what GST did, right? It's not easy because you have to get 30 states on board. So I think we'll get there, but it will take its time. Sanjeev briefly touched upon farm laws. It wasn't lack of effort. I think the farm law was drafted extremely well, but we couldn't get the states on board. But as time passes, I think more and more people will agree, and then I think you'll get a consensus. But that's the structure of our constitution. We're limited by that.
On
the same topic.
On getting, sorry, which reforms?
For us to get to that level of factory.
So yes, it is, as he said, and I also said in my talk, that there are large numbers of things that the states need to do. And I think in some ways, the states need to get on with it and do it. I mean, it's one thing to try and do it from top down, but many of these things are not only in the constitution in the state list, they're actually better done at the state level as well. And that is somewhere where competition between states will matter. And let's face it, it's not the case that this does not happen. You saw, for example, you're now watching, in fact, Uttar Pradesh, which has historically been known to be, not caring about foreign investment and private sector and so on, in just the last few years has been out there attracting very large investments into Noida and even into some of the cities of the interior. So as infrastructure improves, as the the political competition between different states grows, I think some sort of a competitive federalism is developing. It is the case that people do push states to compete with others, and you saw even with, I think, recently when different states were trying to compete to get the fab plants to come, so you saw that. Even states ruled by the same party sometimes, like Gujarat and Maharashtra competing with each other, I think it's a great thing. So ultimately, competition is a good thing. So opening it up, competition, I think, yeah, Ridham, you wanted to add something?
Yeah, no, I think the phrase competitive federalism was coined, I think, 7 or 8 years ago. And the idea is now gaining ground. So I think that's how these factors of production will get reformed. So it's not necessarily just law change, but the fact that, companies will find it easier to do business.
So there will be ways to bring this to you. Mr. Sanyal, there's a question for you. Why is the government not making a start in taxing personal income from agriculture above a certain threshold?
So there are several issues with it. One part of it is that Constitution suggests that it should be done by the states. So that is one part of the thing. My colleague Vivek Debroy has occasionally brought this issue up. But there is a practical thing that you should know. Actually, despite all what you have been told in the Bollywood films from the 1970s, the country actually does not have a very large number of very rich farmers. There are rich people living in rural areas, but most of them make their money by doing something else, being transporters or land development or mining or something. There just isn't that many rich farmers in the country except in maybe 1 or 2 states. So given that that is the context, and given the effort that will have to go into trying to figure out where these people are and trying to tax them, I don't think the bang for the buck is very high. The main thing that you will get out of this is that it will block off maybe some loopholes for allowing non-farm incomes to be claimed as farm incomes and consequently not taxed. Now, that loophole is very easily plugged without having to get into a long and complex and politically charged conversation about taxing agriculture. So the question is, why do you want to do this? Well, is it going to give you a lot of money? Actually, no. The just farm sector, as you know, is already barely 12-13% of the economy. It's mostly very small farmers. So once you go down to how many people actually, rich farmers, you expect to pay taxes, it'll be just a ridiculously small number. The amount of effort to figure out how much they are earning from it is just too high. It's a waste of time. As a loophole, I agree with you. Fairness also maybe another reason you want to do that. Fairness is a longer conversation, but the loophole part of it is also, again, reasonably easily plugged, because if somebody is showing that they're 3 acres of land and getting 5 crores of income every year from that 3 acres of land, it's not that difficult to try and prove otherwise.
Thank you. Ridham, there is a question here saying, what do you think is the next big revolution in the markets that you see? Like how we've had the India stack, we've had the digitization. What do you think is the next big thing coming? And then somebody's asked a question, I don't even know, they say India seems to be the only country that's betting big on green hydrogen. Nobody else is talking about it.
No, that's not true. That's not true. Europe is working on green hydrogen. I know a lot of projects on green hydrogen elsewhere in the world. So India is not the place that's doing green hydrogen. There are debates around green hydrogen, but there are a lot of countries around the world that are doing green hydrogen. So it's not true. And there is no reason to believe why India can't take the lead. I mean, India has, one of the largest energy companies in the world. So if it is at the forefront of green hydrogen, it should not surprise people. What's wrong with that? Right? So I don't think that's a problem. Your first question on the next big thing, I could never have anticipated India stack. So am I going to anticipate the next thing? I don't know. But, let India stack happen. There are some big surprises coming there. And I think the story is still not finished over there. So I think that's certainly happening. But I think what could surprise us on the upside is the amount of foreign money that will come into this country over the next 10 years. I think it will be a staggering amount of money that foreigners will want to put into this country because they want access to the Indian market. They want ability to build production. It will, I think, therefore surprise us on the upside on how employment shapes up. A lot of people have this problem that we are not generating employment. I think that debate will probably end in the next few years. So I think those are the few things that we should watch out for.
Thank you very much. I'm actually going to share these questions with you in the interest of time. I will say there are questions about when will we wipe out the revenue deficit, and why is India not privatizing more airports? What do you think is the most significant change after COVID in the world? So I'm actually going to share these with you in the interest of time, because I know one of our guests has a back-end constraint, and I hope you'll be able to answer these questions. Whoever asked them, please feel free to walk up to them at dinner time and share your question. Thank you so much once again. It has been a wonderful 1 hour, and I wish we could go up. See, even the monitor tells me time's up in red. I wish we could go on for longer. But please do stay with us to the end of the program. Please do have dinner with us. Thank you so much for being here. I'd like to request my colleague Rosie to just share with you a little thank you from us. As was mentioned in Mr. Sanyal's little introduction, his most recent book is Revolutionaries, and it's an incredible book. I bought it, I picked it up yesterday at MOP Vaishnav College, and you have to see it to believe how students were mobbing him to understand the role of the revolutionaries and the forgotten heroes in India's freedom struggle. So,
but for anybody who wants to learn about India's history and geography, you have to read his books.
Yes, absolutely.
And he writes very well. So I've read the book, so I know.
You've already read Revolutionaries? No. Okay, so we have a copy of Revolutionaries for you. And for the others, we also have...
I knew I was going to get a free copy.
I am so predictable, I am sorry. But we also have a copy of a biography of Chennai for you, written by a well-known historian of Chennai. We hope you'll enjoy the book.